Imagine a young man named Lars Mittank, a 28-year-old from Germany, with an unassuming demeanor, a warm smile, and a passion for soccer. Lars had always been a quiet, easygoing soul, known to his friends as the guy who was content just being around those he cared about. For him, this summer vacation was simply a chance to unwind, to let go of daily stresses, and to enjoy a bit of sun and freedom in Varna, a vibrant coastal town in Bulgaria. As Lars and his friends settled into the rhythm of their vacation, it seemed like any typical summer getaway. Days were filled with the usual activities: lazy hours on the beach, strolls through lively markets, and shared laughter over drinks in crowded bars. Lars was always just on the edge of the action, soaking up the atmosphere, seemingly at ease. But sometimes, in true crime stories, the most mysterious tales don't begin with a clear threat or a looming figure in the shadows. They start with subtle moments, almost imperceptible at first, where everything appears completely ordinary. For Lars, this trip was meant to be precisely that, a break from the familiar, a simple escape with friends. Yet, unknown to him and those around him, this ordinary vacation would soon twist into a chilling mystery. As viewers were left asking, was there something in Lars's quiet demeanor that hinted at something deeper? Or was he just an easygoing young man who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? The story of Lars Mittank was about to take a turn, pulling us into a case that would leave questions lingering for years to come. As the sun dipped below the Bulgarian horizon, Lars and his friends set out to experience Varna's vibrant nightlife. The coastal city came alive under the neon glow of its bars and clubs, a place where locals and tourists mingled, drinks flowed freely, and laughter filled the air. For a time, the night seemed perfect, a release, a celebration of freedom. But as it so often happens, the line between carefree fun and something darker can be alarmingly thin. Somewhere amidst the music and chatter, Lars and his friends found themselves entangled in an unexpected scuffle with a group of locals. No one could have predicted it. A few words exchanged, the clash of different cultures, a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Before long, things grew tense. Shoves were exchanged, and Lars ended up with a minor injury to his ear. The physical wound wasn't severe, just a small mark, yet something about the incident visibly shook him. For a man usually reserved and unassuming, even a brief confrontation seemed to cast a shadow over him. Lars's friends tried to reassure him, brushing it off as one of those unpredictable moments that happen when traveling. But the tension lingered, a subtle shift in his expression that was hard to miss. Was it merely the unexpected altercation, or was there a seed of something deeper taking root? Sometimes, as we'll come to see, a single moment, a seemingly insignificant twist can unravel a person's sense of security. For Lars, this small encounter was just the beginning. In the days that followed, his behavior would grow increasingly strange, as though this minor clash had set off a chain reaction, hinting at forces beyond anyone's control. It's here that we begin to wonder, was this just an unfortunate moment of bad luck, or the first sign of a much darker spiral? The morning after the altercation, Lars awoke with a lingering pain in his ear, a dull throbbing that refused to fade. What he had initially dismissed as a minor injury now felt more serious. As the hours wore on, the discomfort grew sharper, settling into a persistent ache that refused to let him forget the events of the previous night. His friends suggested he see a doctor, so Lars agreed, hoping it would be a quick visit, just a reassurance that everything was fine. The local doctor confirmed what Lars likely feared: a ruptured eardrum. It was an injury that could heal on its own, the doctor assured him, but it needed time and care. To prevent infection, he was prescribed antibiotics, and more importantly, he was advised against flying until his ear had a chance to heal. For Lars, this was an unexpected blow. He had been ready to go home, to put the strange night behind him, but now he was alone in a foreign place, injured and uncertain about what lay ahead. With his friends scheduled to fly home, Lars faced the prospect of staying alone in Varna until he was cleared to travel. For a man who had always enjoyed the comfort of familiar routines, this was unsettling. The pain in his ear was more than just physical, it began to weigh on his mind, adding a layer of anxiety he hadn't expected. He was far from home, grappling with a constant ache, and each passing day seemed to amplify the strangeness of his situation. It's easy to overlook how a physical injury can take a toll on someone's mental state, especially when they're isolated in unfamiliar surroundings. With each hour that passed, Lars found himself feeling more adrift, his thoughts clouded by a growing sense of vulnerability. Alone, with no friends to turn to, his mind became fertile ground for fear and paranoia. The ear injury may have been minor, but the effect it had on his psyche was something else entirely. It was as if the pain in his ear had become a voice whispering that he was not safe, that he needed to be on high alert. This was just the beginning of Lars's spiral, a gradual descent from physical pain to something much darker, something that would ultimately drive him into the most inexplicable actions of his life. As we follow Lars on this journey, we're left asking, was this ear injury merely a physical affliction, or was it the first step in an unseen chain of events, pulling him into a deeper, more consuming paranoia? When the day arrived for his friends to return home, Lars was left facing a difficult decision. The doctor's advice was clear: flying with his ruptured eardrum would be risky, potentially turning a minor injury into a far more severe one. As his friends packed up and prepared to leave, Lars reluctantly agreed to stay behind in Varna, giving his ear a few extra days to heal. What had started as a group vacation now took on an entirely different tone. Lars, the usually quiet observer among his friends, was now on his own in a foreign country, feeling more vulnerable with each passing moment. With his friends gone, Lars settled into a modest motel near the airport. The room was basic, with thin walls and flickering lights, far from the lively atmosphere he'd enjoyed with his friends only days before. Every sound, each footstep in the hallway, each distant conversation seemed louder, sharper. The once comforting hum of background noise now only amplified his isolation. He was a lone figure in a place that suddenly felt less like a vacation spot and more like an unfamiliar landscape fraught with uncertainty. Days stretched into endless hours, with nothing but his thoughts for company. The pain in his ear was a constant reminder of the incident that had started it all, a silent echo of that unsettling night out. In the solitude of his motel room, Lars's vulnerability took on a life of its own, growing into a shadow that clung to him. He was no longer the carefree tourist, the young man exploring Varna with friends. Instead, he was now a solitary figure, a man left behind. It's here, in this silent room, that a subtle but powerful shift took place. Lars was cut off from the familiar, from the comfort of his friends, and now he was alone, left to confront his fears in a place that no longer felt welcoming. The sense of safety that comes from being part of a group had vanished, leaving Lars to face his thoughts in a way that felt raw and exposed. The tension, almost invisible at first, now thickened with each passing day, leaving viewers to wonder, was it simply loneliness that weighed on Lars, or was there something else, some unseen presence lurking just beyond his line of sight? As he waited for his ear to heal, The boundaries between rationality and paranoia began to blur. In the dimly lit corridors of the motel, something strange began to unfold. Days passed since Lars's friends had left, and the once vibrant tourist was now reduced to a shadow of his former self, marked by anxious glances and restless pacing. Unbeknownst to him, the motel's security cameras captured his every movement. What the footage revealed was haunting, as if each frame held a piece of a puzzle that no one could solve. The surveillance video shows Lars in the lobby, a place where guests would normally gather to chat or plan their outings. But Lars's behavior was anything but typical. He was alone, yet he kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear, someone only he could sense. In one clip, he's seen whispering to himself, his eyes darting from corner to corner. There's an intensity in his gaze, a raw fear that's impossible to ignore. It's as though he was on edge, bracing for an encounter with a threat no one else could see. At moments, Lars would stop abruptly, listening to something in the distance, his body tensed, ready to flee. His movements were erratic, a stark contrast to the calm demeanor captured in earlier photos from the trip. Whatever he felt lurking around him, real or imagined, had him tightly wound, his every move shadowed by a tension that made it seem like he was being hunted. For viewers, these glimpses into Lars's final days at the motel create an unsettling mystery. What could he have seen, or thought he saw, to instill such palpable fear? The footage is eerie because it leaves no clues, no answers, only questions. There are no figures following him, no obvious threats. And yet, Lars acts as though something sinister is closing in on him. The footage paints a haunting picture, leaving us with an uncomfortable question. Was Lars truly in danger, or was he battling his own mind? His behavior pulls viewers deeper into the mystery, making us wonder if we'll ever know what it was that kept him looking over his shoulder. Each passing frame, each glance behind him, drives home the chilling uncertainty that surrounds his final days in which he seemed to be trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. As Lars's days in Varna grew darker, so did his sense of isolation and dread. In a moment of desperation, he picked up the phone and dialed the one person he trusted most, his mother, Sandra Mittank. The call that followed was unlike any conversation they'd ever had. Sandra, accustomed to Lars's calm, steady demeanor, was now met with a voice filled with anxiety and fear. "Mom," he began, his voice trembling, "I don't feel safe here." He went on to tell her that he was convinced people were following him, shadowing his every move. Sandra listened in stunned silence, struggling to understand her son's sudden paranoia. Lars was never one to overreact, never one to let his imagination get the best of him. And yet, here he was, pleading with her, his words laden with an urgency that left her shaken. Lars's voice grew even more strained, hinting at something darker, something he couldn't quite name, but felt closing in on him. "I don't know who they are, but I think they want to hurt me," he whispered, the line going silent as he waited for his mother's response. Sandra, her heart pounding, tried to reassure him, to calm him down from a distance, but there was little she could do from so far away. Every instinct as a mother told her that Lars's fear was real, even if she couldn't understand it. As viewers, this call home feels like a turning point. Sandra's reaction, her own anxiety growing in response to her son's desperation, makes us question whether this was simply a case of mounting paranoia, or if Lars had indeed stumbled into a threat that only he could sense. Had he seen something that no one else did, or was he losing his grip on reality? The conversation ends with a promise, one that Sandra hoped would reassure him. She urged him to find a way to get home, to leave Bulgaria, and put this nightmare behind him. But the haunting part of this call lingers. Did Lars feel that home was within reach, or was he convinced that whatever pursued him would not let him escape so easily? For Sandra, this call would be the last chance to hear her son's voice, yet it left her with more questions than answers, echoing the deepening mystery surrounding his fate. The day had finally come for Lars to return home, a chance to leave behind the strange paranoia that had gripped him in Varna. He made his way to the airport, his mind likely fixed on reuniting with his family, escaping the isolation and fear that had shadowed his final days in Bulgaria. But before he could board his flight, there was one last requirement: a visit to the airport doctor for a checkup on his ear injury. Sitting in the sterile, white walled room, Lars was anything but calm. He was tense, visibly unsettled, as though every sound, every small movement around him, amplified his sense of dread. The doctor noticed Lars's distress, but continued with the examination, checking his ear and running through the usual protocols. For Lars, however, this simple medical visit seemed to turn into a scene of overwhelming panic. Midway through the consultation, Lars suddenly sprang up from his seat. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something between fear and urgency. "I can't stay here," he said, almost breathless, his voice laced with an intensity that took the doctor by surprise. Lars looked around the room as though expecting something or someone to appear. He didn't explain further, nor did he seem interested in hearing any reassurances. His fear was beyond reason, beyond anything the doctor could calm with words. As he hurried out of the office, leaving the startled doctor behind, Lars's behavior reached a level of alarm that seemed almost uncontainable. He moved through the airport as if every second counted, as if staying one moment longer would put him in unimaginable danger. Viewers are left wondering, what exactly did Lars believe was after him? What had him so terrified that he couldn't even sit through a simple examination? The airport, meant to be a place of departure and relief, had instead become a scene of profound mystery. Lars's fear, so vividly displayed, raises questions that deepen the enigma around his case. Was he merely running from his own thoughts, or was there a force, real or imagined, that he felt closing in, compelling him to escape at all costs? The moment had finally arrived. Lars was mere steps away from boarding the plane that would take him home, back to safety and the familiarity he so desperately longed for. But then something inexplicable happened, something that transformed the calm atmosphere of the airport terminal into a scene out of a thriller. Just as he was about to pass through the gate, Lars froze, his body tense as if he'd sensed an imminent danger, something invisible but undeniable. Without warning, he spun on his heel and took off, sprinting away from the gate, his face etched with a fear so visceral it was captured in every stride. Surveillance cameras recorded him dashing through the terminal, weaving through the crowd, his movements frantic and unyielding. To the people watching, he must have looked like a man fleeing from a terrifying threat, yet there was no one in pursuit, no clear reason for his sudden panic. In his flight, Lars left behind everything: his suitcase, his phone, even his passport. Each item abandoned was another piece of his life left behind, another clue to a mystery that only deepened with his actions. He ran out of the terminal and into the open air, as if the walls of the airport held a danger only he could sense, something so overpowering that it compelled him to cast aside any thoughts of returning home. Viewers are drawn into the chilling uncertainty of this scene, asking themselves, what could drive a person to abandon everything at the very moment they were about to escape? Did Lars feel that even a flight home couldn't offer him the safety he craved? This single act of escape, his desperate sprint out of the airport, paints an unforgettable image of a man fleeing from an unseen terror. With each step, each item left behind, Lars added layers to the mystery that now surrounded him, leaving viewers with a haunting question. Was he running from something real, or had he become trapped in a nightmare of his own making? After his panicked sprint out of the airport, Lars headed toward the open landscape beyond. In the distance lay a thick, dark forest, dense with towering trees and a tangle of undergrowth. Without a backward glance, Lars bolted toward it, disappearing into the shadows of the trees, as if he were being pulled into another world, one far removed from the safety and structure of the airport behind him. This single image, Lars running toward the forest, has since become one of the most haunting aspects of his case. It's an image that has circulated widely, captivating the public and leaving viewers with a deep sense of unease. People watched him run, leaving behind everything that tied him to his life: his suitcase, his passport, his phone. These were the very things he would need to return home, yet he left them all without hesitation, driven by a desperation no one could explain. As we revisit those abandoned belongings, they stand as silent witnesses to his final, unplanned journey. Each item left behind raises the same question: what terror could make someone abandon every connection to their identity? Why would Lars discard all that he had, running toward the forest with nothing but the clothes on his back? For viewers, the image of Lars disappearing into the unknown captures the essence of this case: a young man so close to escape, instead running headlong into something neither he nor anyone else could understand. The forest looms as a symbol of everything unanswered in this story, an impenetrable darkness into which Lars vanished without a trace. In that moment, Lars's world became a mystery, an enigma etched in his final actions. Was he running towards safety or deeper into danger? We are left to wonder, haunted by the sight of a man choosing the forest over home, the unknown over the known. And with each retelling, that shadowy forest stands as a reminder of a man who, in his last moments, ran straight into a mystery that may never be solved. In the days following Lars's disappearance, local authorities launched a search effort across the forest, mobilizing teams, dogs, and volunteers, all combing the dense woods for any sign of the young man who had vanished so suddenly. The forest, sprawling and thick with vegetation, seemed to stretch endlessly, its silence broken only by the sounds of searchers calling out his name, their voices swallowed by the shadows. Yet, despite the thorough efforts, there was nothing: no footprints, no clothing, no evidence to suggest where Lars might have gone or what might have happened to him. It was as if he had been swallowed by the forest itself, leaving not a single clue behind. His abandoned belongings at the airport only added to the eerie feeling a life paused in motion, while the person at its center had seemingly vanished into thin air. The mystery deepened with each passing day. How could a young man, running with purpose and urgency, disappear without leaving a trace? The searchers were baffled, unable to explain how Lars could have simply ceased to exist within the confines of the forest. Each day that passed without a discovery seemed to close another door, darkening the hope of finding him safe. For viewers, the forest becomes more than just a setting. It becomes a symbol of the unanswered questions that surround Lars's case. Its silence is haunting, as though it holds secrets it refuses to reveal. The vastness of the forest emphasizes the enigma of Lars's disappearance, leaving us with an unsettling question that echoes through every retelling of his story. How could a man just vanish? As we reach this turning point, we realize that Lars didn't just disappear from a place, he vanished from the lives of everyone who knew him, leaving behind a silence that grows louder with each year that passes. In the wake of Lars's disappearance, Sandra Mittank, his mother, took on a new and heartbreaking role, that of an advocate, a relentless seeker of answers in a mystery that had left her world shattered. For Sandra, Lars's vanishing was not simply a case, it was her son's life, her memories, and her love caught in a web of unanswered questions. She became the voice that Lars no longer had, determined to keep his story alive, to make the world remember her missing son. With no concrete evidence and an investigation that had stalled, Sandra refused to let Lars's case slip into the abyss of unsolved disappearances. She distributed his photograph, shared his story across news outlets and social media, and appealed to anyone who might have seen him. Every sighting, no matter how improbable, was a beacon of hope she couldn't ignore. Every lead, even the faintest, was pursued with the fierce dedication only a mother could muster. Sandra's dedication brought a human element to Lars's disappearance, a reminder that this was not just a mystery, but the story of a family torn apart, left to endure the unthinkable silence of a missing loved one. Her unwavering hope, though admirable, highlighted the depth of her anguish. Each day that Lars remained missing amplified her frustration, her need to bring him home, or at least find the answers she so desperately sought. For viewers, Sandra's tireless search is a reminder of the depth of a mother's love and the lengths to which she would go to protect her child, even when hope seems distant. Her grief and determination make Lars's story deeply personal, emphasizing the tragedy of an unsolved case that has left his family with only memories and questions. Through Sandra's search, viewers are invited into the heartache of a mother's nightmare, feeling the weight of her pain and the urgency of her quest for answers. And as we watch her efforts, we're reminded of the sorrow that lingers when closure is nowhere in sight. As the years slipped by, the mystery of Lars Mittank's disappearance began to stir the imaginations of people around the world. From online forums to whispered conversations among locals, theories and rumors emerged, each attempting to explain what might have led a young man to flee into a forest, never to be seen again. Some ideas were rooted in fact, while others veered into speculation and the unknown. For viewers, each theory adds another layer to the puzzle, challenging us to decide which, if any, might reveal the truth. One theory suggested Lars had become entangled with criminal elements in Varna. Perhaps his initial altercation at the bar had drawn the attention of dangerous individuals, leading him to fear for his safety. His anxious behavior, his insistence that someone was following him, these could point to an external threat, a hidden danger he was trying to escape. Some have wondered if he had unwittingly found himself at the center of a vendetta or a scheme beyond his understanding, something that made him a target in a world he didn't fully grasp. Others have pointed to mental health concerns, suggesting that Lars may have experienced a sudden psychological breakdown, possibly triggered by the stress of his ear injury and the isolation that followed. This theory considers his increasing paranoia, his calls home, and his irrational decision to abandon everything in a desperate attempt to escape. Had he been overtaken by a sense of fear so profound it led him to flee from imaginary threats? It's a possibility that leaves viewers with mixed feelings. Was this a case of his mind turning against him? Or was there something more tangible at play? Then there are those who believe Lars's disappearance could be linked to organized crime, perhaps involving trafficking or exploitation. This theory is fueled by the knowledge that Varna has, at times, been associated with criminal networks. Could Lars have crossed paths with people who intended him harm? His fear of being followed, his sudden and extreme behavior, some argue that these could be signs of a man who had seen or learned too much, prompting his desperate bid to vanish. These theories, swirling with equal parts possibility and mystery, turn Lars's case into a haunting enigma, a story that feels close yet infinitely distant. Each one raises the question: what really happened to Lars Mittank? Was his terror rooted in real danger, a hidden threat, or an unraveling mind? Viewers are drawn deeper into the speculative world of Lars's fate, debating which theory, if any, might finally lead to closure. And as we sift through the possibilities, one thing becomes clear. In the absence of answers, speculation thrives, casting Lars's story in the shadow of endless what ifs that only intensify the mystery surrounding his disappearance. As the mystery around Lars Mittank deepened, so did the questions surrounding his mental state in those final days. His sudden shifts in behavior, his mounting paranoia, the whispers of danger these signs left experts and investigators divided. Was Lars suffering from a mental health crisis, or was his fear rooted in something real, something lurking beyond what we can see? Some mental health professionals have suggested that Lars may have experienced an acute psychological episode, possibly triggered by the combination of physical pain from his ear injury and the isolation he faced after his friends left. In such cases, heightened stress, foreign surroundings, and loneliness can manifest in paranoia and irrational behavior, convincing someone they are under threat even when they aren't. Perhaps Lars's repeated claims of being followed, his terror during the doctor's visit, and his frantic escape were all symptoms of an unseen battle within his own mind. Yet, as we look closer, we find aspects of Lars's case that challenge the theory of a psychological breakdown. His behavior was marked by a striking consistency, calling his mother, expressing fear of being followed, his urgency to escape, all of which make viewers wonder if he truly believed he was being hunted. Was there someone or something real behind his panic? Had he, perhaps by accident, become a target in ways we can only begin to imagine? Experts remain divided, unable to rule out either possibility, and as viewers, we're left grappling with the same haunting question. Was Lars fleeing an imaginary threat, or was he genuinely running from something dark and dangerous? This question alone deepens the tragedy of his story, leaving us with a profound sense of uncertainty about the reality Lars faced in those final days. To understand Lars's fear, we must also examine the place where he disappeared. Varna, with its lively coastal resorts, bustling nightlife, and vibrant tourist spots, seemed like a paradise. But for locals and certain travelers, Varna also had a darker reputation. Beneath the bright lights and crowded beaches lay a world of criminal networks, a world that whispered of danger for those who wandered too far from the safe zones. Reports had surfaced about drug trafficking, organized crime, and the growing presence of underworld dealings in the region. Some locals warned travelers to be cautious, to avoid certain places after dark. Was it possible that Lars had unknowingly ventured too close to this shadowed world? Had he encountered someone or something that instilled in him a real and pressing fear? If Lars had crossed paths with the wrong people, it would explain his frantic efforts to escape, his whispered claims of being followed, his flight from the airport, his decision to leave everything behind and run toward the forest, all could point to a genuine fear of a danger that Varna's darker elements had brought too close. But then again, was this fear founded in fact, or had Lars become another victim of Varna's chilling undercurrent, a place where even the whisper of crime could drive someone to desperation? This look into Varna's reputation offers an unsettling perspective. For viewers, it raises the stakes of Lars's disappearance, making us wonder if his fears were, in fact, justified. Was he a tourist who'd seen too much, or was he simply a man caught in the shadows of his own mind? In this mix of possibility and danger, the dark side of Varna lingers as a reminder that sometimes a paradise can harbor the most haunting of secrets. In the years following Lars Mittank's disappearance, stories began circulating of potential sightings. People across Europe reported seeing someone who matched Lars's description: disheveled, lost, sometimes wandering aimlessly, a ghost of the young man who had vanished into the Bulgarian forest. Each sighting sparked a moment of hope, as friends, family, and strangers alike wondered, could Lars still be alive? These alleged sightings stretched from Bulgaria to Germany, even as far as Portugal. Each one reignited speculation, feeding the collective desire to solve this mystery. People wanted to believe he had survived, that he was out there somewhere, trying to find his way home. But despite the initial promise these reports offered, none were ever confirmed. Investigators would follow each lead, examining CCTV footage, questioning witnesses, only to find that it wasn't him. For Lars's mother, each report brought a mix of hope and heartbreak. Every time she dared to imagine her son alive, the subsequent disappointment weighed heavily on her. As viewers, we're drawn into this cycle of anticipation and despair, left to wonder if any of these sightings were real or merely cases of mistaken identity, random strangers with a fleeting resemblance to Lars. These unconfirmed sightings keep the mystery alive, dangling the possibility that Lars might still be out there somewhere, but they also deepen the tragedy, underscoring the painful reality that, without concrete answers, his family remains in limbo, caught between hope and the haunting possibility that he might be lost forever. Lars Mittank's case has become more than just a local mystery. It's now a global phenomenon. Thanks to the internet, his story reached millions, sparking interest and investigation from people around the world. Armchair detectives, driven by curiosity and a desire for justice, dove into the case, dissecting every detail of Lars's final moments, analyzing the airport footage, and debating theories in online forums. Social media platforms became hubs of activity, with people sharing his story, speculating on his fate, and combing through any possible clues. Videos, articles, and posts kept the case in the public eye, creating a community of individuals who felt a connection to Lars, who wanted to help solve the mystery from their own homes. Some pored over maps of Varna, pinpointing locations he might have traveled to, while others looked at the medical records, hoping to unlock clues in his physical and psychological state before he vanished. The power of the internet transformed Lars's disappearance from a cold case into a collaborative quest for answers. For viewers, this digital detective work adds another layer to the story, showcasing how the internet has the ability to keep a case alive long after the official search has ended. But with each new theory and speculative post, we're reminded of the vastness of the unknown in Lars's story, a mystery that remains elusive even in a world more connected than ever before. Over the years, small developments and new leads surfaced, each one sparking fresh hope that Lars's mystery might finally be solved. From people who came forward with information to rumors of potential new evidence, each glimmer of progress felt like a step closer to uncovering the truth. Family and followers of the case clung to these moments, hoping that each development might finally hold the answers they'd waited for. Some leads hinted at possible locations where Lars may have been seen, while others suggested connections to local people who might have encountered him. Yet, Each time investigators moved in to verify a tip or investigate a new claim, the outcome was the same: no conclusive answers, no final breakthrough. The case remained just out of reach, like an elusive shadow that slipped away every time someone got close. For viewers, these intermittent developments offer a bittersweet sense of hope and frustration. Each new lead feels like a piece of the puzzle coming into view, yet with every unconfirmed tip or failed search, the mystery grows ever more haunting. The constant cycle of near revelations and dead ends keeps the suspense alive, reminding us that even with renewed efforts, Lars's story remains one of the most enigmatic cases of our time. As we follow each lead, we hold onto a question that refuses to fade. Will there ever be an answer to Lars Mittank's disappearance? As we approach the end of Lars Mittank's story, we take a moment to revisit each theory with a critical eye. Was Lars fleeing from a real danger, someone who posed a true threat to his life? Or was his fear an internal battle, a psychological response to pain, isolation, or even an undiagnosed mental health condition? Some experts have even considered the possibility of a fugue state, a rare condition in which a person loses awareness of their identity and can vanish for years, wandering as a stranger in their own life. Each theory carries its own set of plausibilities and questions. Did he willingly disappear to start a new life? Or was he the unwilling victim of a series of events that spiraled out of control? For viewers, this systematic examination brings us to a place where every possibility feels simultaneously feasible and impossible. We're left to weigh the options, to consider each angle, as if we're part of the investigation ourselves, adding our own voices to the chorus seeking answers. Beyond the theories, the impact of Lars's disappearance lies heavily on his family. For his mother Sandra, the pain is immeasurable, a wound that time cannot heal, an emptiness that no explanation can fill. Lars's absence has reshaped her life, turning her into both an advocate and a symbol of the power of a mother's love, her relentless search keeping his memory alive. The strength it takes to hold onto hope in the face of unending questions, the resilience needed to carry on in the face of loss, is a powerful reminder of the human toll behind each unsolved case. This legacy, the anguish, the love, the determination adds depth to Lars's story. It's not just a mystery, it's a life interrupted, a family forever changed. Viewers are brought face to face with the reality that behind every unresolved disappearance, there are people whose lives are left in pieces, clinging to memories and faint glimmers of hope. In the end, Lars Mittank's case remains shrouded in unanswered questions. Theories abound, clues lead to dead ends, and every possible explanation leaves room for doubt. We've retraced his steps, examined his behavior, and considered every angle, yet the truth eludes us, slipping just out of reach. Was Lars a man fleeing from real danger, or was he trapped in a prison of his own mind? And if he is still out there somewhere, will he ever be found? For those watching, the mystery of Lars Mittank's disappearance becomes a call to action. If you've seen something, if you know something, no matter how small it may seem, you could hold the key to solving this case. Every share, every retelling keeps his story alive and increases the chances that someone somewhere might provide the final piece to this puzzle. Together, we can keep searching, keep hoping, and maybe, just maybe, bring the closure that Lars's family and the world have waited so long to find. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest details can change everything. If you have information, if you remember something, don't hesitate. Your voice could be the one that finally answers the question that has haunted so many. What happened to Lars Mittank?